My name is Hai Nguyen. I am co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Protomatrix. Typically, we do webinars on the introduction to Protomatrix and talk about the basics of the software. But today, what I'll be talking about is collaborative goal setting. And one of the reasons I bring this up is because Protomatrix works really well for individuals, but it works even better when you're actually using Protomatrix with a team and sharing your goals with each other and ensuring that everyone is on the same page. My goals for today to help you understand the basics and principles of the Eisenhower matrix, which is, the core behind our software, and then how to use Protomatrix for setting team goals, and then how to use the collaborative features in Protomatrix, and then lastly, to provide you some tips on how to track progress and readjust priorities. I do want to emphasize that at the end of the day, how you use Protomatrix is really the key to your success. There's many ways to use the software, but what I want you to be able to walk away from today's meeting is that you be excited about how to actually keep your team aligned and that you become more effective and productive without putting in more work. So if you can get that sense from today's call, then I would have done my job properly. But if you have any questions or doubt, it is a perfect time to bring up those questions to me, right, either right now or by email. So what is Protomatrix? So it's a comprehensive email priority and project management software that helps at three different levels. At the individual level, it helps you prioritize your most important tasks and emails. And that's what Protomatrix really started at a long time ago, more than a decade ago. What happens though, is that once we help the individual prioritize their task and their emails, we realize that if you're able to go and take that same priorities and communicate it to your team members, then it helps everyone be on the same page. One of the things I want to highlight is that you can imagine Protomatrix as something that, as a communication tool that ensures that you and all your coworkers are on the exact same page on everything that is truly important. And if you're able to use Protomatrix at the team level, at the organizational level, Protomatrix delivers even more value by creating continuity in the priorities, in the task, and ensuring that, when you have a new team member come in, they get a complete understanding of exactly what everyone's priorities are at any point in time. So let's start with the fundamental concept behind Protomatrix. There's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." And what I really like about this quote is that it helps us understand and categorize the tasks that we have to do, right? If you're like me, in the morning, guess what? One of the first thing you do is you check your emails. And guess what? You probably had got a lot of emails. Are they important? Probably not. But guess what? You end up looking at the last email in first. And that's what happens in our society and in the way that we do our work. The last thing in is the first thing out. And so, in fact, if someone pings us over and over again, as in they send us emails over and over again, or they send us messages in these communication software over and over again, the more they do that, the more we're inclined to actually respond to them, right? And that should not be the way we work. We should be focused on the important stuff, not the urgent stuff. And so what I like about this quote is it actually breaks up the tasks that we have. So instead of actually having one long list of the things you have to do, instead you use what's called the Eisenhower matrix. It's a simple, powerful time management framework that essentially takes the tasks that we have and categorizes into 4 distinct buckets. You can think of the buckets as important and urgent, important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and then not important and not urgent. And what it does really well is that it helps us prioritize our task and makes it visual. It makes it explicit where our priorities are. And so this is what it is at the personal level. And so when you use Protomatrix, what happens is we've taken that Eisenhower matrix and we've implemented it in such a way where we make it very visual and very easy for you to see exactly what it is that you need to work on. So then the important urgent tasks, that's a do now. And then the important but not urgent are the things that you plan for. That's quadrant 2. And then the things that you can delegate are the things that maybe are urgent but not necessarily important to you. So maybe someone else can do that job, or somebody else can actually leverage their resources to do that better than you can. And then lastly, you shouldn't have anything that's not important and not urgent. So instead, we call that the inbox. So that's the catch-all. Everything that comes in goes in there, and then you decide where to put it. So this is the Eisenhower matrix, at the personal level. Now, here's where it's really interesting. What if we take the same concept, the same dimensions of importance and urgency, and extend it to team goals? And so Promatrix itself is a very flexible software. And so one of the things I want to show you today is how you can adapt Promatrix to work the way that you want to work, and the way that your organization works, and the way that your team members will work. So then everyone's actually benefiting from the software. So I can actually go and adjust Promatrix, and instead of using the dimensions of importance and urgency, I can look at the dimensions of impact. And so instead, on the top left, the do now are the high impact goals. And then the top right are high impact, low effort, quick wins. And then what are the risks that I have? And then catch all, again, as that's my inbox. So one of the takeaways that I want you to have today, when you start to use Promatrix, or if you're already, very proficient at it and you're taking Promatrix to the next level, which is to think about how to take the tasks that you have and break it into these various dimensions that make sense. So when you think about the team aspect of Promatrix, it boils down to communication. And an analogy that I have that I really like is, if you think about the Eisenhower matrix, right? So imagine right now you take out a piece of paper, you write down the 15 things you have to do, and then you put into those buckets that we talked about. Hey, these are my important and urgent tasks. These are my important but not urgent tasks. This is sort of everything else. So you do that exercise. So now you have a matrix, and on that matrix, you have everything that you have to do. Now ask your coworkers to do the same thing. Um, After that, walk around the office and start comparing notes. You go to your manager and you tell your manager, hey, by the way, these are my priorities. What do you think? Are we on the same page? And then take a look at your manager's priorities. Then take a look at your direct reports priorities, and so on and so on. So the magic of Promatrix is really around ensuring that you take all these things that's in your brain and making it explicit, making it clear to everybody else what your priorities are. And so that's how you can actually be aligned. So a couple of things when we talk about goal setting, here's some strategies that I want to mention. One, you use the SMART framework, which means whatever goals it is that you set for your team should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So if you think about that, when you use Promatrix to plan things out, keep that in mind. So when you put in the task and when you set the due dates and all that and categorize them into the various buckets, that's a framework that's very helpful. And then second, think about time, short-term and long-term goals. So it's not just about, measuring the stuff that or achieving the things that you want to do this week or this quarter. It's about achieving the things you want to achieve next year or in 5 years, and ensuring that your short-term goals are actually working towards that. And then also remind yourself on why you set up the longer term goals. And so for me personally, what I love about Promatrix and my goals project is that I can look at it on a daily basis. And then it reminds me, okay, you know what? This is what I need to work on. And then not only that, I can actually set reminders in Promatrix so then I don't forget my long-term goals. That's one of the challenges that a lot of us face. It's not that we don't set good goals, and it's not that we don't know that our goals are important. We do. It's just that there are so many things that's on our plate at any point in time. And so they start crowding out the truly important stuff. And so one of the strategies I'll show you today is how to use a reminder system to ensure that you work on those long-term goals. And then lastly, use anti-goals to set boundaries. And so this is actually not specific to Promatrix itself, but what I like about the anti-goals and using the Promatrix system for tracking it is that it makes it, again, explicit. So when you look at it, you're reminded of your goals, but also the things you shouldn't do or wouldn't do. A couple of things that I want to highlight before I actually walk you through the product and all that. These are some key ideas and tips that, so snippets for you to think about as you use Promatrix, today, this month, this year, and, this decade, for lack of better words. One, always keep in mind that if everything is important and urgent, then nothing is important and urgent. This is extremely crucial for managers. So, you've probably had managers where everything is on fire, right? So he's like, you got to do this right now. Got to get it done. And then 2 minutes later, there's something new that you got to get it done right now. If you do that, it's not going to work. And if you do that to your direct reports, that's not going to work either. So if everything's important and urgent, then nothing's important and urgent. Instead, when you write it down in a matrix, just keep that in mind. We know that priorities shift. Just, if you're constantly firefighting and everything is in quadrant one, then you're not going to achieve the things that you want to achieve. The second tip is to regularly review and update your task prioritization. Now, there are people who use Protomatrix on a daily basis, as in every single hour they're looking at Protomatrix, they're creating tasks, they're delegating. Then there are people who use Protomatrix on a weekly basis, which means they go in and look at the things they want to achieve this week and all that. And then there's people who use Protomatrix on a monthly or quarterly basis, where they look at Protomatrix as just a much broader system to make sure that they're going in the right direction as opposed to the daily execution. So how you use Protomatrix is really up to you, but keep a good rhythm. So what I want to recommend to you, all of you here, is that when you think about using Protomatrix, just make sure that you set those a recurring date or whatever, where, you know what, on Monday morning is when I check my Protomatrix. I need to look at my goals. I need to look at my tasks. Need to make sure that, my coworkers are on the same page. The third tip is to identify and eliminate time wasters. And so this is actually relatively generic, but it's one of those things where I personally feel is extremely important. Again, for me, and I'm sure for many of you, there's just a lot of things that's on my plate. There's too many things, in fact. And so being able to go and say, you know what, these are the things I'm going to do, and these are the things I'm not going to do. Let's just, don't have these unnecessary meetings just to get alignment. Instead, spend 5 minutes looking at Protomatrix and see if your coworkers is on the same page as you. If you are, what's the point? Don't have that meeting. If there's disagreements, that's when you have a meeting. But don't talk about everything. Just talk about the things where you do have disagreements. So that's a tip that I think is extremely powerful, and it's a way for you to gain back your time. Learn to say no to tasks that don't align with your goals and priorities. The key here is to make sure that you know what your priorities and goals are in the first place, right? So if your manager assigns you a goal or a task in Protomatrix, and again, you already have your quadrant one is maxed out, that's when you push back and you say, you know what? I know you're assigning me this, and I know this is important, but if we're taking this, what are we taking out? And so that's a thing that I think a lot of us don't do enough. We just take on more and more things, and we don't say no enough times. Make sure you break large tasks into smaller, manageable steps. As I mentioned, how in Protomatrix, people use it in different ways, again, on the daily basis, the weekly basis, or the monthly/quarterly basis. You can also use Protomatrix at different levels. So for example, some people use Protomatrix to track every single task that they have. So for example, you might use Protomatrix for sales and marketing. And in this case of sales, you might have every single customer that comes in, you have all the tasks that you have to do for them, and you're inviting team members so they're on the same page, right? Or you might use Protomatrix at a much broader level. So imagine if you're at the executive level and you're looking at just broad goals. And so in that case, you're looking at these tasks or quote task in Protomatrix, but really what they equate to is actually whole generic strategies and initiatives that someone else has to take. So when you look at Protomatrix, also think about how do you want to use it at the micromanagement level or at the broader strokes. And the cool thing is you can use Protomatrix in both ways. Use time blocking to allocate specific time slots for different tasks. This is a very, very powerful strategy to ensure that we work on the most important tasks because otherwise the urgent things will take over. So that's how you overcome the urgency trap. And then lastly, regularly reassess and adjust your strategies based on results. I'm not going to claim that Protomatrix will solve all the problems that you have in terms of prioritization and so forth, but the capability of Protomatrix and the customization around Protomatrix and the Eisenhower matrix in general is just so powerful as a way to communicate your priorities that by just adjusting how you use it, it'll work the way that you work, and that's the most important part. Okay, so the four quadrant Eisenhower matrix creates alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the beginning. You have probably used so many task management software before. You probably have your task list, you have your notebook with all the things you have written down on it, and a lot of us do that. The difference is by using Matrix, you have to put things into those four quadrants. It's very, very hard to make those choices and decisions early on, but that's why it's important. And then when it comes to goals, success from using Matrix is just as much about identifying what you need to work on every day as identifying what you should not work on every day. So I hope that, when you walk away from this webinar, even if you don't use Matrix, and that's perfectly okay. But if you walk away from this webinar and you think about the tasks that you have to do, just think about, okay, where do I want to spend my time and where do I not want to spend my time? So I want to go and emphasize that, I'll try to show you how to actually put this into practice. This webinar, along with all my previous webinars, are on affluence.com/webinars. And then also, if you're new to some of the features in Matrix, make sure you check out the introduction webinars. We also have webinars on email management, templates management, and so forth. Again, today's webinar is focused on collaborative goal setting, so that's where we'll spend our time. All right, let's go into a demo of Matrix and how to put this into practice. So what you see now is actually my Matrix on the web app. So in this demo account, I have a lot of different things that I want to show you. First, I'm going to start with my personal priorities. And so if I go to my personal priority project, on the left-hand side here, this is the list of projects that I have. So you can think of projects as anything from actual project to goals to things that are transient or things that are persistent. So let me explain the difference. Imagine if you are responsible for an initiative. Well, that initiative might be to grow your sales pipeline by 25% this year, right? That's a transient project. It has a start, it has a beginning, it has an end. And so that's a transient project. You might have a different project that says, these are all the product features that we want to build for a specific product within our company. Well, that's a never ending one. So in our organization, we have persistent projects for every single one of our software applications. So we have our apps for iPhone, for Mac, for Windows, and so forth. And so those things never go away. So when we track the priorities and so forth, that information persists forever, right? So on the left-hand side here, I have a decent number of projects in my demo account here, a few dozen. In my actual work account, I have more than 300 projects. So I want to let you know that don't be scared of creating projects as long as it helps you organize your information. A couple of strategies that I want to recommend in terms of creating projects. One, you should always have a project for personal priorities. This is so important because this is about you, right? You need to know what it is that you need to work on, what you want to work on. And the personal priorities could be both for work as well as for personal life. That's totally up to you, and you can create different ones as needed. The second project you should have is what's called team priorities. And so this is the information that I showed you earlier, how instead of actually do now, do later, this quadrant name is actually different. High impact goals, quick wins, risk mitigation, and catch all. And so in this particular case, for this project, I might have additional team members associated with it. So what that means is if I have a team priority project, if I'm a manager, I should have my direct reports. If I have a manager who's sharing priorities with me, I might be in his or her project along with all my other colleagues to be sure that I'm on the same page. And one of the other things you can see here is I also have projects for my personal goals. I also have projects for Q3 goals, etc. So those are the various types of projects that you can have. So let me show you an example here now with my team priorities. Here on the right-hand side is what's called the project details. The project details tells me a couple of things. One, who's in this project with me. So again, if you have a team priority project, then you should consider who are the people I want to have in this project. If I click on this plus icon, then I can invite additional people as needed. Everyone who's in this project will be on the same page. That's the key, right? So instead of having a team meeting, a staff meeting, just to be aligned and talk about your goals, instead, anyone can open their team priority project at any point in time, take a look at it and see, okay, you know what? These are the goals that we have. These are the tasks that we have. I understand. what everyone's working on, and I understand what I'm working on, and I don't have any disagreement. And then when you do have disagreements, that's when you can bring it up and say, hey, why are we working on this and not this, right? And that's the key. So be cognizant about who you have within these projects, and make sure that you have all the relevant stakeholders within each of your team priority projects. And then below that, you actually have the quadrants, as I mentioned. Now, in Protomatrix, the quadrants are completely customizable. So I changed Do Now to High Impact Goals, and you can click on here and change the name. As you use Protomatrix more and more, you'll find that you want to change the name of these quadrants to things that make sense to you. So we have general recommendations, but at the same time, your specific use case matters the most. And then you can also change the color. So if you click on this icon right here, you can use a different color coding to represent the quadrants themselves. Why do you want to do that? It's just a matter of visualization. So for some people, when they see green, they see red, or various other colors, it represents different meaning to their team or their organization. And then at the same time, you can think that you can use these colors as themes. So then you can look at the left-hand side and see, okay, these are all my team priorities, projects, and then these are all my projects related to my clients, my customers, etc. Okay, now let's talk about tasks in Protomatrix. So how does it work? So creating a task in Protomatrix is actually very, very straightforward. You see how when I hover over each quadrant, there's a little add icon that pops up here. So I can go ahead and click on add item here. And then one of the tasks that I have to do, for example, would be follow up with webinar participants. Okay, so that's a very straightforward task that I have. If you don't know this already, but Protomatrix uses what's called natural language. And so what that means is that when I create this task, one of the things I want to do is I can say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. So when I create this task right here, our system automatically interprets due tomorrow at 2 p.m. and create the due date for you using that natural language. Now, this is a personal task, but imagine if I actually need to delegate it to a coworker. It's actually very straightforward. I can actually click on this icon right here and then assign to another person. And so now someone else is responsible for this task, but I'm a follower. So when you think about teamwork and collaboration, someone might be doing the job, but if you're the manager, you might want to know if that work has made progress, right? So if I assign this task to Eugenia, I want to know that, hey, Eugenia got it done, or if she missed the deadline, or she set a due date, or she set a reminder, and it got missed or didn't trigger, or we have to reassign it to somebody else. And so a follower is someone that would get updates and alerts on the changes to this task. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you think about how you're using Protomatrix in a team environment. So if you're a manager and there's a very important task that you see, then you want to make sure that you click on this plus icon and add yourself to it. So then you'll get updates for it. Next to that, you have progress, effort, reminder, and dates. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to actually set the due date and the reminders for all your tasks. And there's a big difference between due dates and reminders. Due dates is when it's due, but reminders is a way to make sure that it's top of mind. So let me give you an example. Let's just say you have a very, very important task that you need to work on. And then again, it's going to take you 7 days of work, right? You set a due date on the actual final day when it's due. Now that day comes and you hadn't gotten started yet. So there's no way you can do 7 days worth of work in one day. Instead, what you want to be able to do is you want to actually set a recurring reminder ahead of time. And so down here, you can actually click on reminder and then set the reminder to get started prior to that. But I can also use natural language in Protomatrix to set that reminder. So down here, I can say, remind me daily. So now on a daily basis, the application will send me a reminder to make sure I work on this task. But since we're talking about a team environment, it's not just about you. Instead, you can say remind everybody daily. And so now not only do you get the notification, but also your coworker as well. So when you think about team collaboration and making sure that everyone's on the same page, setting these reminders that pings every single person on the most important task is a very, very powerful approach. It's the way to keep it top of mind, because always be cognizant that, on everyone's plate, they just have a lot of things they have to do. A lot of new things are coming in at any point in time. If it's not top of mind, it's going to be forgotten. make that assumption. And so when you use Matrix, think of reminders as a way to overcome all these urgent trap that we have, right? All these things that's coming in and taking our attention away. Okay, so down here I have the chat section. This is where you saw how I typed some messages to set commands and all that. But at the same time, it's the place where you guys can communicate to each other. So Eugenia can open her task in Matrix and can respond to this. And she could ask me, hey, could you clarify? Or could you upload the list of attendees so I can follow up with them, etc. So that's what this place is for. And so you can have communication. No, it's communication within context. So what that means is that everyone here is on the same page with respect to this task in particular. So as an example, so let's just say if you use Microsoft Teams or Slack and you're talking to your coworker and you're talking about so many different things at the same time, a month from now, when you need to go back and review the status of tasks, sometimes you start forgetting. It's like, hey, what did we talk about? What did we say we were going to do, right? And so you can imagine how you can actually lose context very, very easily if you're not on top of that. By using Matrix and by using this chat system, you're able to communicate and be on the same page and within the context of this task. Then later on, imagine, in a month or 2 months, and I need to assign this task to another person. So now let's say I invite another person to this task. Guess what? They can open the task and see the entire history, all the conversations that Eugenia and I had around this, and they can see, okay, I see that, we set these due dates. I see that these documents were uploaded and so on. So I want to emphasize how by using the chat part here in each task, you're actually building knowledge for your organization. And so when you have an employee that's on leave or leaves the company completely, someone else can take over the task and know exactly what they have to do. And that's very, very powerful. One of the biggest challenges I've seen talking to customers is that they have an employee who turns over and someone else needs to take over the job and they have no context. They don't know the priorities. They don't know the record and the history of all that. But Matrix makes it possible for you to review that history. So if you're a manager and you have, multiple team members and you're finding that you have a lot of employees churn and turnover and all that, Matrix actually gives you so much value being able to reassign those tasks to a new person. And then similarly, if you're responsible for a task and then you're on leave, right? You're out sick or whatever, someone else can actually take a look at the Party Matrix and know exactly what your priorities are. And they don't have to send you 5 emails and call you 10 times just to know what it is that you're working on. So you can think of Party Matrix creating that single source of truth across your team and organization. In the notes section here, this is where you can add information around the subtask and all that. And then finally in the resources section is where you can attach the files, the documents, the links for everything that's relevant to this particular task. Now, anything that you put here would be accessible to your team members who's in the same project as you. So what that means is, if you have an email that you're assigning to somebody, you can actually go and upload it into Matrix, and now your coworker can open that email and respond to it as needed. Okay, so that's in a nutshell is the item details. The item details, again, is where you can assign people tasks, you can set those due dates, you can set those reminders, and attach resources. So one of the things I want to mention now is around collaborative email management, which is a very, very important thing. So I am sure that you get a lot of emails. And sometimes when you get those emails, of course, what you want to make sure you do is you make sure that you work on your emails first, right? So as an example, let's say I get an email, and I need to prioritize that email. Instead of just flagging the email and marking as unread, what I want to do in Matrix is I want to go click on apps here, click on my Matrix for email integrations, which is Matrix turn email into task. Click on that, choose prioritize email, and now I can convert any email into a task. And here's the thing where Matrix shines. One, I can organize it into specific projects, okay? So I can actually go and say, you know what, this is in my team priority project, okay? And then I can actually say what quadrant it goes in. Is this a quadrant 1, important and urgent, or quadrant 2, 3, or 4? And here's the cool and powerful part about this email integrations. I can assign this email to another person. So maybe the email is for me, but sometimes I need someone else to take over this email. And then now I can set a due dates, and suddenly I'm able to organize a task, put in the appropriate project, put in the appropriate quadrants, assign it to the appropriate person, and set a clear due date. And that's very, very powerful. When you flag an email or when you forward an email, the problem is that it becomes part of one of many other flag emails or one of many other forwarded emails. You don't know if your coworkers are going to be able to see those emails and actually address those emails. And then they may not know when it's due, right? And so if you're a manager and you got an email from a client and the client requires some really immediate attention and you forward it to somebody, they may not see it because they may, it'll come in, and then 15 minutes later, they got 3 or 4 other emails. And guess what? They look at the last urgent emails instead of the emails you forwarded, right? And so by using Matrix, you can actually set those due dates and assign it in priorities. And so when they look at their Matrix, they see, oh, hey, I need to answer this email, and I need to do it by this date. So this is an extremely powerful way to assign an email to a coworker, and I hope you take advantage of it. To get to this, all you have to do is in Outlook, simply click on Apps and then click on the App Store and install Matrix Turn Email into Tasks, which is our top integrations, one of the top integrations in the Microsoft Outlook ecosystem. So when we talk about collaboration, Matrix also integrates into Microsoft Teams as well. So if you happen to use Microsoft Teams at your organization, Matrix is almost a no-brainer to install in Teams. So if you go to apps down here, you can search for Matrix, you can pin it, and then once you pin it, what happens is you get access to the entire Matrix application inside Teams. And the reason why I want to emphasize this for team collaboration is because you're probably spending so much time talking to each other in Teams already. By adding Matrix, you're actually able to bring up that information that you need in real time. So let me show you how that works. Now, I can access my Matrix here, right? This allows me to get to all my projects, all my tasks. But what I can also do is actually I can go to my coworker, click on this plus icon here, choose Matrix, and actually choose what's called the one-on-one view. So the way it works with the one-on-one view is it actually allows me to see all the tasks I have in common with my coworker. And I'll show you how that looks. I have that installed here for Eugenia. And when I open this, you can see how I can actually see all the tasks I have with Eugenia across my entire Matrix. And so when I talk about team prioritization and making sure that I'm on the same page as my coworkers, when I go to Teams, Microsoft Teams, and I have this one-on-one view for every single person I work with, I can actually just go down the list and see what it is that they're working on, what are the tasks that they have overdue, and then the progress of each task. And then I can actually create share tasks all within this view. And it is such a powerful way, an easy way to ensure that you guys are on the same page. One of the challenges that I've seen over and over again is that someone will be in a meeting and, let's just imagine, I'm sure you've probably experienced this recently. You're in a meeting with a couple of team members. You talk about the things you would do or the things you want to do. And then everyone agrees, hey, that's a great idea. Let's do it. 2 weeks later, you go back and then, ask the status, hey, by the way, did we end up doing that? And someone's answer will be, oh, no, we never wrote it down, right? If you've experienced that, then I'm sure, this will benefit you so much because with Matrix, right when you have that moment of epiphany, you have that great idea, click on Add Share Task, just type the task name real quick, and then, again, new task, that's awesome, due in 2 weeks. And if you just do that and you click add, what happens is Matrix will create the task, automatically assign to your coworker, and set the due date for you. And it is so easy to do that you won't forget, to actually write that down. And so instead of having to open up your software, go to a project, create a task, assign it to a person, set a due date, Matrix lets you skip that entire process in one and able to do this in one pass. So just click on add share task, and this automatic assignments and then using natural language makes it very, very powerful. And in fact, you could go down here and assign it to a specific project too, if needed. The other thing that Protomatrix does inside Microsoft Teams is the ability to integrate with the way that you work already as well. So, when we talk about teamwork and collaboration, you're sending messages back and forth in Teams all the time. I mean, there's no questions around that, right? I mean, that's how we communicate. So with Protomatrix, we don't expect you to always be in our system to communicate. But let's just imagine if you and a coworker talk about some of the tasks that you want to achieve, guess what? You can actually hover over that conversation that you have with your coworker, click on this ellipsis and choose create PM item. And you can actually create a task in Protomatrix without having to leave Microsoft Teams. Again, this is one of those things that we do for you to make it easy for you to actually create tasks and be able to organize the information and setting the proper due date with your coworkers. And then not only that, Protomatrix captures the exact moment when you had that conversation. So let me give you a simple example. Imagine if you and a coworker are talking about doing something and then you create the task in Protomatrix, and then 6 months later you want to go back and say, hey, by the way, I know we are supposed to do this, but why did we say we would do it again? Guess what? Protomatrix links to that moment in time when you had that conversation with your coworker. And so you see this special link right here. We link back to that moment in time when you said you would do XYZ. And so that allows you to actually pull up and get the proper context as needed. So that's another example of how Protomatrix integrates within Microsoft Teams. In fact, we're probably the most integrated system in Microsoft in general. And so within Teams itself, you can actually add and share Protomatrix action items by clicking on this plus icon here and then choosing Protomatrix. You're actually able to share tasks and all that. One of the strategies that I have is that sometimes I would assign a coworker a task, but they may not see it. And so what I can do is I can go to Microsoft Teams, click on this plus icon, click on Protomatrix, and then actually attach the task and send it to them as needed. So I want you to, try that, especially if you plan on using Protomatrix within the Microsoft ecosystem, and especially if you need to do a lot of task assignment with your coworkers. Okay, now I'm going to go back to Protomatrix for a second here, and I want to talk about how do you know what it is you need to work on, right? So let's just imagine if you and your team members are on Protomatrix. How do you know where to start your day? Well, it's very, very simple. When you open Protomatrix, there's this thing called the home view. The home view is where you should start. And essentially, it has what's called alerts. These are items that require your attention. So what that means is these are tasks that were assigned to you. These are tasks where you have a due dates or reminders that triggered. And so when you work with others and they assign you tasks, you'll see them here in the alerts view. The other thing that happens is that when you go to the alert view, it shows the things that you should process and then get to inbox 0. And so what that means is that, again, these are the 59 items that requires my attention. If I come back to here and I have a lot of tasks that I'm mentioned in, but I don't get to, it means I might drop some very important things. But what I can also do is actually clear all notifications. And so then I'll get to a blank slate. Then tasks that trigger again will show up here in the alerts. Now, let me give you a quick tip regarding reminders that I mentioned earlier. Remember how I said reminders is a way to trick our brain into working on those important tasks? Well, guess what? Make sure that you set the due dates and those recurring reminders for anything that is truly critical. Then, even if you go to Protomatrix and you clear all notifications, those recurring reminders will trigger again. So when I use Protomatrix, one of the things I do, for example, if I have a goal for this year, I would go and set a recurring monthly reminder. So let me show you how that works. So if I click on goals in Protomatrix here, right? And let's just say one of my goals is to read a business book every month. I can actually go in here and set my recurring reminders on a monthly basis. So now every single month, I'll get an alert in my home view here that says, read that new business book that you said you would read. And that's how I'm reminded of everything that's actually important to my work. And so similarly, if you have critical tasks, just set those recurring reminders, and you can do that recurring reminders for everybody. You remember how you can say remind not just me, but remind everybody on a monthly basis and so forth. So that's the alerts view. The other thing you can do is actually go to the agenda view, and this is where you can see all the tasks that you and your coworkers have for this week, for today, for this coming month, etc. So the agenda view essentially shows you the task with due dates. So I highly recommend, again, setting due dates for anything that's important, because when you go to this view, you can see not only what you're working on, but everyone who works with you, what they're working on, and decide, hey, this seems like the right thing to work on, or this seems like the wrong thing to work on. Now, if you go to my items, these are tasks that's focused on you. These are things assigned to you specifically. One of the powerful thing about Protomatrix is the ability for you to pull whatever information that you need. So on the left-hand side here, we have what's called various global views. So for example, I can go to the search view, and when I go to the search view, it shows me everything I have in Protomatrix. But here's the useful part. If you're a manager and you have a lot of direct reports, you can click on this filter, and then you can say, find me the task assigned to a certain person, right? And what this does now is actually shows me everything that is assigned to Remy. And then not only that, I can actually go and sort it by due dates or by other metrics. I can actually find the items that Remy finished. I can find the items that Remy, which quadrants those items are in. So when you use Protomatrix in a collaborative environment, you can actually generate all sorts of reports. And it is so useful if you're, let's say you're a business owner, you have a bunch of employees working all sorts of stuff. You can't have a meeting with all of them. You're not able to know what they all work on, but you can just go to Protomatrix, select the person, and see what are the things they finish. And you can actually choose the due dates on when they finished it, and then the things they worked on last quarter, last month, etc., all in one view, and then you can print it out or export it as needed. So it's a way to be on top of everything that's happening around you without having to have a meeting just to get to that alignment, because that information is all available in Protomatrix. So keep that in mind in terms of the filter here. The search view is what used to be called the master view. Essentially, it's the one place for you to get any information that you need around your work and your coworkers' work. On the left-hand side, there's a couple of other views as well. So you can see how there's the calendar view. So essentially, I can see all the tasks that I have, but that have due dates, and so I can see it across all my projects. And then I have the Gantt chart view, and so this is the global view across all of the tasks that I have, but on a much larger time scale. So essentially, you go to the calendar view to see the things you have to work on today or this week. But if you go to the Gantt chart view, you can see the things that you need to work on across quarters, across months, quarters, and years. And so Protomatrix actually provide you one view to see everything that you have to do and who's it's assigned to. And so if you have a lot of workers, coworkers, and you want to know, what their timeline is, you can actually go to this view and see the task that's assigned to them across many, many months, right? And you can use the filter system to get whatever information that you need. And then when it comes to managing your employees as well, one of the things Protomatrix allows you to do is actually build workload management reports. And so you can actually go to reports here, go to workload reports, and you can see all the coworkers that you have, the number of tasks they have for any point in time, this week, this month. And then also you can actually change the mode to see how much schedule work they have, or how much effort hours they have for the task at hand, because not all tasks are created equal. And so you're able to actually drill down on each of these tasks, reassign them as needed, and be able to make sure that your employees are not overloaded. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges that we all have, which is someone will have all the work and someone else will have almost none of the work, and you want to make sure that it's equally distributed and not overwhelm others. Similarly, if you're working with the managers who's assigning you so many things, you can actually go to the view here and show them, hey, by the way, I got all these things on my plate. What do you want me to drop, right? I can't get all this done. I can't do 70 hours worth of work in a 40-hour work week. So what are we reprioritizing? What are we going to shift? And so when you think about Protomatrix, it works both ways. It's a way for you to manage your employees, but it's a way for you to communicate to others your workload at any point in time as well. Okay, so let me go back to the home view here. Last thing I want to show you is how you can actually ensure that the people that you work with get proper notifications. So when you choose a task and you have a task and you send a message here, it will update the alert. But one of the things you can do in particular is you can use the @ here. And so if you type @ then you can actually select a person. And so when you do something like that, what happens is that person will get a special notification that mentions them specifically. So this is very similar to a lot of chat software, but I want to highlight that in particular because sometimes, I get so many notifications. My coworkers really want to get my attention. They'll do the @me, and then I'll get that proper notification. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my presentation here. So now it's up to you. If you haven't used Protomatrix already, make sure you sign up for Protomatrix. And if you have, if you've used Microsoft, make sure you use our application in Teams and Outlook. And then otherwise, use our desktop app. So we actually have native Mac app, native Windows app, and of course, Protomatrix works on the web at any point in time. So no matter where you are. And then when you create projects, I would create at least 3 different projects. Your personal priority project, your share team priority project, and then a goals project. So the goals project could be either both personal goals or also your department goals or whatever that is. And then when you create a task in Protomatrix, make sure you set those due dates and make sure you put them in the appropriate quadrants and make sure you don't drop those tasks. As I mentioned earlier, have a routine around reviewing your Protomatrix, right? Either Monday morning or Friday afternoon or whatever it is, you go in and you look at Protomatrix, you reassign tasks, you reprioritize them as needed. And then when you need to have your team meetings, project Protomatrix onto the big screen. And that will actually help you be on the same page as your coworkers. And what success should look like with Protomatrix: 1, on a personal level, you're checking Protomatrix every week to remind yourself of your goals. And then you have one central place to track your priorities. And then on the team level, everyone understands what everyone else is working on, right? So if you ever have a problem or understanding what your coworkers are working on, think about how Protomatrix will be able to communicate to everybody. These are each of your priorities. These are the things you're working on this week. These are the things you're working on this month, and so forth. And this is what quadrant it belongs in. And then lastly, at the team level, if you have important emails and you need to triage them to appropriate team members, then make sure you use our Outlook integrations to create those due dates, create those assigning those emails to the appropriate people, put them in the appropriate quadrants, right? Then that's the key. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Now, I know that, some of you will be sending me questions by email afterwards. I'm perfectly happy to answer those questions. If there's any questions in the webinar chat right now, I'd be happy to take a look at them as well. Thank you.